The Minister of Science, Technology and Innovation, Dr. Blade Nzimande, has taken action following the recent withdrawal of funding from key research and development programs by the U.S. government. The department says it is now in the process of appointing a working group on science, technology and innovation funding. So that group will play a crucial role in assessing the implications of the funding withdrawal and then develop strategies to mitigate risks related to external funding of research and development programs. Let's bring in the Minister now. Dr. Blade Nzimande, good morning to you and welcome to the program. Thank you as always for your time. I shared a little bit with our viewers there what the ambit of the working group's role is going to be, but just talk to us more about how they will work and what the timeframes are for them to assess the impacts and come up with mitigating strategies.
Thanks. Good morning, Iman, to you and your viewers and listeners. Let me just start by very quickly reminding you that as the Department of Science, Technology and Innovation, we are involved in a whole range of research in the area of energy, for instance, battery storage in the light of new technologies that are there. We are also have a huge portfolio on health innovation, which is looking at cancer research, HIV and AIDS research, as well as vaccines. So it's a department that is quite central in terms of both the modernization of our economy and also tackling matters relating to climate change, for instance. It is precisely in these areas, Iman, that we've got lots of international cooperation and international relations, not least with the United States. So the aim then of this working group that I've established is that in the light of the announcements and withdrawal of funding by President Trump, in many parts of the world, including South Africa, I just want to have a very clear assessment of the nature and extent of the impact of the withdrawal of these funds, because we have lots of projects between our universities, our scientists, our professors, with the United States, with their counterpart in the United States, apart from monies that have been set aside to be given to us. Already when President Trump assumed office and it was clear that he was taking actions that could harm some of our research interests, our department was doing some initial work on this, but we realized that in fact this thing may be a bit more bigger than we realized. So that is why I decided to appoint this committee. So I want this committee, in short, to do this: the nature and extent of the impact, the negative impact of President Trump's actions on our research projects, and including in monetary terms, how much does this translate into, but also in which areas is this going to impact most? What are the most critical areas that may be affected? But I've said they mustn't stop there. They must then also tell me that what are the measures that we actually need to take, both in the immediate as well as the medium to long term, including, Iman, they must begin to point at the whole implications of the geopolitical situation on South Africa's science, technology, and innovation system. We can't just be looking at the US. It's an opportunity just to look globally so that we are able to learn appropriate lessons and identify who our friends are and how, in the end, we are able to build what I would call a sovereign research system that is not entirely dependent on outside help, especially in areas that are most critical.
Well, you've almost answered the second question, but you've also dealt with the first one I was going to ask about what percentage of US funding fuels our local programs. And I guess you've answered that by saying this is what this working group is going to do, is to, to sketch that out and then to look at stopgaps in the meantime. But given what you've just touched on now, South Africa's heavy reliance on US funds for really critical research in HIV and TB, for example, you would agree then it's a wake-up call about our vulnerability to foreign donors?
Well, definitely there is no doubt about that, Iman. That's why, as minister, for instance, and other people in the sector have been calling for more funding that needs to be given to our science, technology, and innovation system. For instance, in terms of research and development as a country, we are at about 0.6% spend of our GDP. We would like to be at 1.5%. So this further underlines the importance of that. But also, even more important, the necessity to pool our resources, minimal as they may look, in the African continent, as well as deepening our relations with our partners and friends, like in the BRICS formation, a relationship, for instance, with China. I'll be visiting China next week. They've got a major conference on science, technology, and innovation under their Belt and Road program, as they actually call it. So it's going to be very important, therefore, that we actually learn lessons that you can't ever well, you will never do away with international cooperation. Science, by its very nature, actually relies a lot on this, and also to get some outside assistance. Our system is the biggest in Africa, but it's still not large enough. But nevertheless, what we should be aiming for in the short to medium term is that our key research priorities, at least we must be able to say, we're either completely funding them, or if not, we are being supported by more reliable partners going forward.
How will this funding cut, Minister, affect ongoing clinical trials and patients who are already enrolled? Are lives at risk right now due to this disruption?
Well, look, Iman, I can't answer that definitively now, except anecdotally, because that's precisely why I'm having this group, because I don't want to have a guess and be unclear about what the situation is. Already a number of researchers, professors have raised this matter with me. In any case, they raised it as I was in the process of establishing this team, so that I am able to know exactly. But I have no doubt that this is actually going to have some impact in terms of ongoing research, in terms of HIV and AIDS, which is very critical, because science is very important, for instance, in the end, in finding a cure or mechanism to prevent even a vaccine. HIV/AIDS infection, for instance. Science, we are hopeful in the end will do that. For instance, it's likely to have impact on our aspects of our cancer research. We are doing a lot of research and partnerships on cancer, as it has become another pandemic now in South Africa. Just to make an example in relation to the health. Also, our president is leading a very important effort in the African continent of what we call pandemic preparedness. For instance, that science tells us that with climate change, we are still to have more pandemics. COVID-19 is not the last. So as a continent, we need to have, for instance, amongst others, vaccines, which were exposed under COVID-19, vaccines in particular for pandemics that are peculiar to our continent, because we can't rely on North American or European pharmaceutical companies to be able to produce these vaccines for our continent. So we need to reach a certain measure of self-sufficiency. So these are some of the things that may actually be affected with this. But I have said to this committee, just to this working group, Iman, I hope to be appointing them by the beginning of next week. I'm now consulting about the names, not consulting. I've approached people, I've decided on the names, who is available to serve. I said within a month, in fact, by end of June, they need to give me their first report. Okay. So that then the first report must be able to say, what's the nature and extent of the negative impact on this? Then possibly thereafter, I may ask them to work, as I have said, for a couple of months, just to look at our science system in the current global context and implications for going forward as a country.
Dr. Blade Nzimande, thanks for your time this morning and just sharing some of the insights there about this new Science, Technology and Innovation Working Group to assess that impact. And I think in a further conversation, we'll be able to see which programs, clinical trials and so on, including future funding partnerships, will emanate from this, but also the impact to potential trials and ongoing research.